Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Julianna Newland. We're going to be discussing her amazing book, All Up in Your Bizness, Managing Your Business Crap. Available for purchase through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, pretty much wherever books are sold. But if you want to gather everything that she has in store, people, do yourself a favor and head directly to her personal site. And that's allupinyourbizness.com. And just to make sure, business is spelled Bizness. Allupinyourbizness.com. It's a one-stop shop for everything that she has, people. You're going to find more information on her, more information on this fantastic book, as well as find hyperlinks set up to take you to the purchasing pages. So one more time, that's allupinyourbizness.com. And I do want to take this opportunity and quickly point out that Julianna was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by one of the best advertising firms in the business. And you already know I'm talking about Content Media Press. So listen to me. For my writers out there, if you have just gone through your process, you have worked tirelessly to create your masterpiece, and now you find yourself at what appears to be a dead end because, well, now you need help moving the book you just finished writing. Well, I'm going to give you some fantastic advice. Contact Content Media. They're one of the best in the business to do it, and people, this is exactly what they specialize in. So head on over to contentmediapress.com and gather all of the ways that they're going to help maximize your creative endeavors. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Julianna here on the line. Now, aside from it being a catchy title, this is a fantastic book you're going to want to add to your shelf. It is a witty and hilariously written book around the workplace environment. And for a lot of you out there, when you pick up this book and you start to embark upon the journey that's been laid out, it may even feel nostalgic from a certain point, because I'm sure a lot of this is going to resonate with you. We have all been there at one time or the other when we're in our work environment. We're in the office space. And, there's two employees that don't really get along. And then we have a bunch of other people spreading gossip. And then we have some other ones hooking up there on the side. I mean, listen, there's a lot happening. There's a juggling act that is going on. How do we balance it all? How do we experience it all? How do we make sure that we don't get lost in the shuffle? This book is fantastic for so many reasons. I'm telling you, this is something you're going to want to add to your shelf. And by the time we've concluded here today, you're going to do just that, because you're going to understand this is not a book just to have on a rainy day to pass some time. This is a book that has some substance there as well. And at the end of the day, don't take my word for it. Take Julianna's. It's her book. She's written it. It's partially taken from her life, so she's lived it. And she's going to be able to articulate it all much better than I ever could. So do me a favor. Sit back and strap in. Julianna, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today?
I'm doing quite well, thank you, and I appreciate this opportunity.
So absolutely. Listen, we appreciate you writing the book, so now you're here on the network to discuss it. I think what you're doing here is so fun and is something that is needed because, as I mentioned in my opening, we've all been there at one time or another, and we've experienced this work these work relationships, right? This workplace environment and how to juggle it all and balance it. Before we jump into the book, Julianna, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background.
Well, I am recently retired. I spent a little over 30 years in the workplace here in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I worked 24 years for a Fortune 500 company, and then I worked several years for some nonprofits and state government and a trade association. And as I mentioned, I recently retired, and all the while that I was working, I came upon these interesting things that I observed among people. People are people, and they behave differently in many ways.
Yeah.
So I started kind of observing and taking notes of what to me seemed to be somewhat funny, but I know it's also frustrating. So I took these notes, and then after I retired, I decided, well, I'm going to do something with this because I think there might be good content here for a book, and I began to write the book.
Let's jump right in. The anchor, all about your book, all up in your business, managing your business crap. Julianna, tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, as the title seems to indicate, it's a reflection of the workplace, but looking more specifically at the behavioral interactions between men and women. It's written tongue-in-cheek, and it's witty, and it has some sass to it as well. It reflects the author in those ways, I think. As I mentioned, over the years, in any workplace environment, there will be some friction. Yeah. There's just friction between the behaviors of people who think differently and act differently. But the key to all of this is to know how you should behave. But I don't mean that from sort of a strict standpoint, as more so to relax and understand the situation better, and maybe use a little humor to help get you through these situations. Mm-hmm. So I have it divided, I think, into 45 different sections, and this book is very short. You can read it in one evening or over a long extended lunch period or just a weekday. And it's intended to look at some situations such as applying for a job, the job interview itself. What should you do? What should you not do? And I add some funny observations along those lines. And then also things such as was mentioned, the office hookup. Is that appropriate? Should you do it? Should you not? And if you're going to do it, what's going to likely happen? And then also asking for a pay raise. And one of the things that I observe in my book is that men and women treat asking for pay raises differently. It's been my experience that men are much more aggressive about asking for a pay raise than women are. And part of that may be because women just over the years have not been as recognized for their talents and experience and what they bring to the position as men have. And I think men just don't feel as constrained when it comes to asking for a pay raise. This book is not a man-bashing book in any way. It's just explaining what I have observed over the years. And grant you, my work career started back in the 1980s, so I'm an old broad. But this looks through all of this time, from the 80s to the 2000s, and these different experiences. Another interesting part of the book is after you have a long, tiring, horrible day at work, you want to come home and relax. So I have included 9 original craft cocktail recipes that were created by 2 mixologists, friends of mine, who work at a favorite restaurant of mine. And I gave each one of these drinks a business name, such as networking, thinking outside the box, and those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. They're original recipes that these gentlemen created for this book, and they are included. And then one other interesting aspect, and it maybe to some seems disjointed, but if you look at it in a humorous way, I think you'll see how it fits. That is, I introduce my muse. She is a 2-foot-tall, nymph-like character who likes to hang out in my master closet. And she's there because she's supposed to help me with my creative writing. So when I have writing assignments, which I've had in my jobs throughout my entire career, they were very heavy with writing assignments, speeches and talking points and legislation, et cetera. So she's supposed to be helping me with these, but I can't seem to get her out of the master closet. She likes to go clubbing, and she dresses kind of, shall we say, whorish. And she struts around my condo in gaucho pants and a tube top, which tells you she's not really up on the fashion trends. of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But that's another interesting part of the book. We have a lot of dialogue back and forth. A lot of it is frictional, causes friction.
Yeah.
But she is the funny part of the book.
Julianna, I love this. And one thing that comes up that I can envision so clearly, this is, of course, a literary creation, but I see this as almost a sketch comedy show, or what can be developed into a sketch comedy between the nymph that you were just talking about, or the nymph like character, to these different office occurrences. I mean, this is something that I can easily see on the big screen. People, I love it. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, allupinyourbusiness.com. Head on over there today. Pick up your copies of this magnificent book. I'm telling you, this is something you want to add to your shelf. Curiosity here with this next one. But Julianna, what would you say throughout this entire process was a highlight for you? Or if not a highlight, something that surprised you that you weren't anticipating before you began?
One thing that really stands out in my mind that surprised me is how long the publishing process takes. I know that the writing process itself took almost 6 months for me. And as I mentioned, it is a very short book, but that is a pretty long period of time. And I didn't do that exclusively. I worked it around other responsibilities that I had.
Yeah.
But once I submitted the book to the publisher, it took almost a year before it went to sale. So that was one thing that really surprised me. Another thing that surprised me was that, and I shouldn't say it surprised me, someone anticipated it, but you do get writer's block. You'll think you have an idea or a notion that's really interesting, and then you start to write it, and then it doesn't go anywhere. It's just, there's a block, and you try to think of a way to remove the block. And there's different people use different approaches, but that was something that I thought that I would be able to easily overcome because of all my years of writing different types of documents and papers and speeches and whatnot. But it really is challenging when you have writer's block to get yourself to not be so frustrated with the challenges that you have.
Yeah. Julianna, that's a great point that you bring up. And people, first and foremost, both of those notions that she just raised are wonderful pieces of advice for new writers out there listening in. Understanding the publishing side of things is huge, and we can have an entire conversation just on that. But talking about writer's block is the next place that I want to go, because I think it's an interesting point, and it really brings up a great moment to offer advice. For any new writers out there listening in right now, Julianna, how did you overcome those moments of writer's block, and what advice would you give to writers when they experience it themselves?
What I would do is pull away from it for a bit, usually a couple of hours, maybe a little bit longer, and just try to relax my mind and just not think about what I wanted to write. Just let my brain relax a little bit. I maybe would listen to some music. I did that a lot, just listen to music and relax, and then go back to it. And sometimes even when I was trying to fall asleep, some notions would come into my head, and I would jot them down and then come back to them the next day. So there's different ways that you can approach it. I think different people have different styles for dealing with this. But I just found the best thing was to just get away from it for a while and let your brain relax a little bit and then come back to it.
Yeah. Great advice. Julianna, I'm an artist myself. I'm in a different medium. I'm an actor and a filmmaker by trade, and of course now transitioned into this field. But I love this. One of my favorite questions to ask artists along their particular journey is, if you could enter the world of the book that you've created, Julianna, which page would you choose to land on and why?
That's a very good question. I think I would land on one of the pages where I have my interaction with the muse, because that's where it's more centrally identified with me as the character. And so I would land on one of those pages where she and I go round and round about whether or not she's going to help me or why she's using my makeup and that sort of thing. Another page that I would like to land on would be the advice that I give people for office hookups. I've never had that experience myself, but I know people who have, and in all situations, it did not work out well for them. It just did not work out well. So that would be a page that I would like to land in to offer advice as I did in the book. And what I said was basically, you are not Jim and Pam from The Office. This really doesn't happen in real life.
I mean, listen, they had such a beautiful relationship, though, didn't they? I mean, it was absolutely magnificent. Rocky road, but ultimately their relationship. I'm a huge Office fan, so yeah, this is right up my alley here, Julianna. I love the notion. I love the reference. People, listen. I can sit here and I can talk to Julianna for hours. I think this book is magnificent, very lighthearted, but also grounded and steeped in some fantastic notions and something that we all should spend some time exploring. Because again, very common, right? The bridge is there. This is relatable content that you're all going to be able to understand and take home to the bank. As we close out here, Julianna, we have discussed so much here today, but is there anything that we haven't yet touched upon that you really want to make sure our listening audience is aware of?
I think you've done a wonderful job in touching upon and asking the questions that bring out the key aspects of the book and how people can purchase the book and what drew me to writing the book. And in closing, I guess I want people to know, as was stated, that there, in addition to the funny and witty parts of this book, I do provide some advice. Some of it is tongue-in-cheek, and you'll have to understand that and read through it. But a lot of it is really good, practical advice based on 30 years of my experience.
Mm-hmm. You know, and people, that brings up a fantastic point. Similar, and I'm going to go down my philosophical lane here, but similar to life, this book represents so much, where when you add humor to a lot of things, it's going to help process. It's going to help you work through situations, but also understanding that below that humor, there is substance there, right? And so many aspects of life are just like that. A lot of situations that may not seem funny in the moment, you can bring humor to it, and it actually will help you swallow some of that, right? It'll help it make it a little easier to navigate those tough waters. I'm telling you, this book is a wonderful resource. I know I'm sold. I know a lot of you out there are just like me. You've been hanging on to every word that she said so intently, and you are already heading on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, allupinyourbusiness.com, and you're getting ready to purchase copies of your book. Everybody else, you're asleep, okay? You need to wake up or you're going to get passed by. This is a magnificent resource to add to your shelf. I'm going to take it a step further. It's an amazing gift for you to get for someone else to add to theirs. Head on over there today, pick up your copies, and of course, you have Julianna Newland to thank for all of it. Julianna, this has been a true pleasure, an absolute delight. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate talking with you. It's been a joy.